So I'm in a group chat right now, and everybody in that group chat makes $400,000 to $500,000 a month. I make like $120,000 a month. But like for me, the idea of making $400,000 or $500,000 a month is like, of course I would. Because I'm in the group chat with them. I talk to them every single day. Of course I'm going to make that. Why wouldn't I? As opposed to, what? Like, I don't even know how I'd do that in a year. I'm like, everyone I'm around does that in a month. So that just shows like they're not even giving me any tactics or strategies. It's just repetition of what's possible.
Nobody's born incredible. People who do incredible things simply took the right steps. This is our journey. This is the hunt for incredible. All right, on today's episode, we have a very special guest. We got my man, Brian Luebben. Brian is the author of a great book called From Passive to Passionate. He has a community called Action Academy where he helps individuals go from paid jobs to independent wealth to gain time, freedom, geographic freedom, etc. I'm super stoked to have you, man. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Dude, thanks for having me, man. Yeah, every single day I wake up and I ask, how do I help 1 million people replace corporate with cash flow? So I'm a huge fan of alliteration, and people will learn that pretty quickly throughout this episode. But yeah, man, it's really going from me to we. Like, I did a bunch of cool stuff in my life, and now I'm like, how do I help other people do cool stuff too? And that's where like success and fulfillment comes from. So
yeah, man, I love it. This episode was a little bit difficult for me to figure out like what questions I want to pull together and where I want to guide it, because when I was doing my research, you had such great content on other podcasts where you talk about your story and how you got there, and it brought up some questions for me that I didn't hear in some of those other recordings. And so I was debating like, do I give people the great meat and potatoes that are from the other podcasts, or do I tease out some newer things? So what I'm going to do with this episode is I'm going to link in the show notes some of the other great podcasts that I listen to you and other resources to add more about you, just so that if individuals want more context, they can go there. But I'd love to start with your journey in terms of like where you started to where you are now, and then we can just tease out along the way.
Sure. Where do you want me to start?
Let's start with your corporate gig, and then the realization that you had where you said, dude, this isn't for me, and then your actions to actually take that leap out.
Sweet. Yeah. So I started in college, got a marketing degree, hopped out of there, went into a Fortune 500 sales organization, was number 8 out of 5,079 there. So I always say that because whenever people are like, I was the top sales rep, it could be out of like 12 people.
Right.
So I was number 8 out of 5,079. And so I did the sales thing and eventually got to a point where I looked at my boss's boss. And that's something that I recommend to every single person. I try to drop that in every single podcast because that singular action changed my freaking life. When I looked at my boss's boss, it was my VP of sales at the time. And when you're getting promoted in corporate, what you do is you shadow your manager and then you shadow your manager's manager, right? And you kind of do it for a couple of days or maybe a week. And so I shadowed my VP and I was just like, dude, like, what is this? Like, what is this life? I mean, man, you are like not watching your daughters grow up. Like you're getting overweight. You're eating donuts. That's your entire diet. Your diet is basically donuts and Zoom calls, like in 15-minute increments. And I was just like, so if I work my ass off, like I'm gonna have less freedom later for not that much more money, because when you're looking at your pay, you need to look at your hourly rate, even if you're on like salary or variable compensation. So I was making $250,000 a year. By the time I finished, I was like really, really good at it. So I was doing it in maybe like 30, 35 hours a week. I'd do it in like 3 days, like Monday through Wednesday, and then I'd leave and go kind of travel around. So long story short, after I looked at my boss's boss, I realized that like the corporate life wasn't for me anymore. And we can go into why I despise corporate America and so many different reasons. But from that point, I started buying real estate. I started up my podcast, The Action Academy, because I realized I didn't have all of these secret tips and techniques and tricks to become financially free. So why not just go ask people that had done it before me? And so that's what I built my show for. It's Action Academy, Millionaire Mentorship for your life and business. And I pitched it to these multimillionaires that I was meeting at these real estate meetups and online. And I said, hey, you're a millionaire, come on my Millionaire podcast, right? And so the quality of your life is directly determined by the quality of questions that you ask into who. That's a really important point, because I was asking my mom, my friends, and my family, and they were telling me all the reasons to not invest, to not do my thing. So long story short, I started up the podcast, started making a business from that, bought single family real estate in the very beginning, did the co-living strategy, replaced $28,000 a month in passive, air quotes, income. and left that job March of 2022. Went to travel full-time around the world after that. So I went for 8 months. I traveled to Spain. I traveled to Europe. I traveled to Greece. I lived in the Greek islands for a month. I went to Brazil. I went to all of Latin America. And I did that for 8 months and came back, moved to Austin, Texas, started a new company. And now I make millions of dollars a year while traveling full-time around the world. So I have done what most people want to do, and I'm about to turn 30 this year. So fun podcast episode. Let's rock.
Yeah, let's do it, man. And I'd like to tease something out there that you commented on, that, but it's important to know, which is only listen to the people who have done what you're trying to do.
It's so important.
Like, one of the most important things when listening and taking advice is filtering out the bad advice. And the way that you can tease out and identify the good advice from the bad advice is by identifying the people who have done what you're trying to do and who can say, look, this is how you get from A to B, which is why podcasts like this are so important, right? So like, you sharing how you did things is going to give people the wisdom and insights to do it. I was actually just having a conversation with somebody the other day about college. And the degree that this individual is, I'm not going to give any names away, but the degree that this individual was going to college for just didn't make any sense. Like, the return on that collegiate investment just did not make any sense. And she was telling me the guidance that she was getting from other people and who she was getting it from. And when I looked at the people she was getting guidance from, I thought, are these actually the people that you want to be getting guidance from? Like, have these people done the thing that you're trying to do? And in this specific instance, that person the person giving the guidance had not done anywhere near what this individual is trying to achieve. She was trying to achieve something else. And so I shared with her, you need to identify those people who have done what you're trying to do, and then build relationships with them, engage with them, and refine your life's roadmap and gain guidance from those people so that you increase your probability of getting to that place that you're actually trying to go.
Yeah, and it's super important because nobody talks about this when it comes to like your personal development journey or financial freedom journey, but you outgrow people.
Yeah.
And it's a painful process. And for some reason, no book, no podcast talks about the process of, I have friend group A and I become person B. Person B no longer jives with friend group A, but they're my ride or dies. I've been friends with them for 5-10 years, maybe even longer. Like, do I just throw them away? What do I do now? Like, and also, how do I make new friends? Where are new people like me, right? And then that is human existence. That is growth. That is maturity. That is adulthood. But nobody gives you like a tactical guide, but I found one way, like one framework that actually helped. It's called the minivan theory. Have you heard of the minivan theory?
Is this like people hop on and off the minivan on your journey?
To a degree, but what it is instead of thinking about your life like, you know, like that in that context where you have people enter and exit your vehicle, instead think of your life like a minivan where you have multiple rows of seats. So you have the front seat, you have the middle seat, and you have the back seat. And so you don't have to kick people off of your van of life as you're going on, but they don't need to be sitting in the front seat.
Right.
So like whoever's sitting in the front seat is like the person that's helping you with the navigation. They're choosing the music. So not only are they setting the direction, but they're setting the mood. They're setting the environment. That's your front seat, like your navigator there. So like your people in the middle are going to be the people that you're still having conversations with in the back. And then the back row is still along for the ride, but they're not directly like having input in things. And so even for me in my life today, you know, I have family. Most of my immediate family is in the back seat. And that's just because, you know, they don't understand what I'm doing or why I'm doing it. And they, you know, a lot of people that are listening to this relate with that. And I have a lot of friends that are in the back seat of the van. They're still on the van, like completely. But it's just like you're moving on. And it's time to have new friendships, new relationships. And so I call it pond hopping. Like whenever you're the biggest fish in a little pond, you're not going to grow anymore because there's no more space. So you need to continuously hop from pond to pond to pond. And as you do it, that's the only way that you're going to be able to grow. And there's two different ways to pond hop, which is what you were alluding to, is how do you add value to the people that you want to hang out with and that you want to become. And there's two different ways, you either pay to play or seek to serve. That's it. Those are the only two ways to pond hop. So, for instance, to land the plane here, say that I am beginning my investing journey and I want to have these millionaire mentors and capital partners and investing partners and all these people. I have no idea where they're at. I have no idea how to add value to them or why they'd want to hang out with me. So that's the pond that I want to enter, but I'm over here. So how do I do it? So way one, if you have zero money, all you have is time. So you're going to invest your time into them. That is seek to serve. And this is 100% for free. So it's going to take energy and effort and intention. But what you're going to do is you're going to find those people. You're going to follow them. You're going to engage with their content because hopefully they're going to be online. And from that point, you're going to find a specific quantifiable problem that they have. And you're going to go and lead with you solving that problem. You're not going to say, hey, what can I help you with? How can I add value? That gives you more work to do.
Right.
And I have hundreds of people DMing me that, and it sucks. I'm never going to reply to them. But the people that are saying, hey, I saw that you're dealing with this. I proactively did this. Let me know if this helps with no ask. And I'm like, ooh, okay, that's awesome. Like, what can I help you with? And then I want to reciprocate. That is seeking to serve. Eventually, once your time becomes more valuable than the money, then now you need to pivot to paying to play. So then that's when you're paying to join communities, paying for coaching, paying for mentorship, stuff like that. And that's the world that I live in today. So in the beginning, I was gutting out multifamily investors' apartments. I was helping them. I was like, dude, tell me what you need. Like, you say jump, I'll ask how high. And I was doing it, everything that I needed to do. And now it's just like, I don't have time for that. So now I'm paying $10,000 for a consult or paying $20,000 to join a mastermind and stuff like that. So it's inevitable, but it's just part of the process.
Yeah. And the other aspect of that is going into environments where there's a higher concentration of people who you can do that with. So you've mentioned you went from Atlanta to Austin for that reason. I went from San Antonio to San Diego for that reason. Of just fully submerging yourself in an environment where it's fully saturated with the type of person that you are trying to do that with. Because then when you're in this ecosystem, it not only increases the probability that you'll find that type of person, but it increases the opportunity to deliver value and to satisfy those types of people. So going to San Diego, for example, just being fully submerged in the real estate environment there, that's how I ended up actually getting into and acquiring this hotel, was engaging with investors, understanding what types of properties they were looking for, engaging with investors, understanding what their risk tolerance was, the types of things that they were looking for, and then piecing together those pieces of the puzzle to where my partners and I, we actually ended up identifying a hotel that was a killer deal. We were ripping through, you talk about tracking your metrics, which is something else that we could dive into also. We probably ripped through, I want to say maybe like 300 to 500 hotels, underwriting them, spoke to at least like 700 brokers, trying to build those relationships, ended up landing down on one hotel and then taking that hotel to a seasoned investor who had done 11 hotels over the last 30 years, who was highly qualified, who could come in on the deal with us and then get us great rates on lending, helped us raise capital because we were an experienced team, even though my partners and I hadn't purchased a hotel before, and just built that environment and ecosystem where it was easier to piece the puzzle together because there were more pieces of the puzzle to actually fit together.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's what's super important that's where it all starts with, is like having that clarity in the very beginning, because everybody's looking for, dude, I had this one thing that I really wanted to say and I lost my train of thought. What did you just say before that?
Before going into an environment that has a higher
Yes. Okay, perfect. Yeah. I have a story about that really quickly, and then edit for the editor right there. No, this is like huge. So you talk about environment mattering more than anything. And I 1000% agree. Most people get this wrong because what they're doing is they're trying to have this like level 10 life, but they have a level 2 opportunity, or they're trying to have this level 10 experience in a level 2 environment. Like the environment does not support the experience. So an example of this is how your environment controls you is I went into, because you control your environment, but then your environment ultimately will control you back and forth. It's a reciprocal relationship. So when I came to Austin, Texas, I came here instead of San Diego because in San Diego, everybody had already made their money. And in Austin, Texas, everyone was making their money. So here, everyone was like healthy, fit, like young, trying to build things, full of energy, full of optimism. Like those are the people that I want to be around. And I got this apartment. It's my dream apartment that's on the water here in Austin, Texas. And every single day I walk down by the water and there's this boardwalk. And as I'm walking on this boardwalk, I hate running, by the way, and that's important. I just want to walk, just vibe, right? But everyone around me is shirtless, ripped, with six-pack abs, sprinting past me on this boardwalk. Dude, and I'm like, I hate running, but I'm not going to be the only motherfucker not running. And so I'm like, okay, screw it. So I take my shirt off, I start running. And so every single time that I don't want to run, I'm just going to go walk. I'm just going to go walk on this boardwalk. And I know because everyone else is running and they're ripped, I'm going to run because I want to be ripped. And I was just like, dude, what a perfect analogy for everything we're talking about. It's like, what gym do you want to go to if you want to be ripped? Are you going to go to Planet Fitness, or are you going to go to Gold's Gym with Schwarzenegger and all of them? Like, dude, it's the game changer. So it's all about environments, all about location. So important.
100%. And to add to that, people love the expression, you are the average of the 5 people you surround yourself with, but it's actually a lot scarier than that, because they've done studies and found that you're actually the lowest common denominator of the 5 people you surround yourself with. So they did a study with treadmills in an office where people had a walking treadmill that they could work while they walked, or they could just decide to sit at their desk. And what they found was that people that were placed in environments where there were some people walking on the treadmill and some people not walking, they were more likely to not walk. Whereas when they were in environments where everybody was walking on the treadmill, they were more inclined to walk. So people naturally will gravitate towards like the least effort, right? And your brain works the same way. Your brain is constantly trying to do things with the least effort possible, which is why such a large percentage of your brain goes towards autopilot, where like 80 to 90% of your actions are actually autopilot, which is a crazy separate conversation that we can have. But you end up engaging with the world around you based on the lowest energy required. And so it's not just surrounding yourself with great 5 people, it's making sure that all of those 5 people are great. So you're not at the average, you will actually be at the bottom. So like you mentioning that there were people running around.
I was the bottom.
Yeah, exactly.
Great, wonderful.
Exactly.
Mission accomplished.
Yeah, and if you were out there and half the people were walking or running with their shirts off and they were with washboard abs, and then the other half were walking, you would have kept walking. Right? But since you were the only one walking, you said, shit, I better actually get up and start running so that I'm not the lowest common denominator. I need to elevate, because like the lowest part of the average is higher.
Yeah. How do I make friends? Like, how do I become this new person? Is literally go to where those people are hanging out. It's that simple, but we try to overcomplicate the most basic truths of life. Like right now, what I do, a trick that I do in my business is like my entire podcast is how do I grow a business from $0 to $10 million a year while traveling full time around the world, right? And so a framing question that I ask myself 24/7 is, if I'm making a decision or if I'm even like scrolling through TikTok on my phone for too long, I'm like, what would the $10 million version of me do today here? And like, what would the $10 million version of this business look like? And I literally frame that, and I'm like, okay, well, what would that person do? And then the closer that I can take me to that person, then the faster the business snaps into that reality. So I have this quote that's like perfectly tying in together with everything that we're talking about, and that is, immersion yields conversion. Immersion yields conversion. So you want to be a multimillionaire, the last thing you want to do is isolate yourself and listen to podcasts and YouTube videos and just do everything on your own. The fastest, most efficient, foolproof way to become a multimillionaire is to get into rooms with other multimillionaires. Not because you're going to learn all these secret techniques, tricks, and tactics, but simply because you can see that they are no different from you. They are just determined enough to keep persevering when their self-limiting beliefs tell them that they shouldn't. And so it's just like when you're around them, you just see what's possible. So I'm in a group chat right now, and everybody in that group chat makes $400,000 to $500,000 a month. I make like $120,000 a month. But like for me, the idea of making $400,000 or $500,000 a month is like, of course I would. Because I'm in the group chat with them. I talk to them every single day. Of course I'm going to make that. Why wouldn't I? As opposed to, what? Like, I don't even know how I'd do that in a year. I'm like, everyone I'm around does that in a month. So that just shows like they're not even giving me any tactics or strategies. It's just repetition of what's possible. And that's what the most important thing about community is like you're literally paying just to see what's actually possible. And when people like join my thing like Action Academy, I tell them, I'm like, 30 days from now, like right now you're terrified about the idea of buying like commercial real estate or buying your own business. But 30 days from now, you're going to be like, oh yeah, $4 million deal. Of course I would do that. Everyone else is doing it. I could do it.
Yeah. 100%. Man, there's so many directions to take from there. So there's the option of fully submerging yourself. And then there's the other option, which I really like. And then we'll get back to your story because I really want to finish it. We're getting super stoked about all these other nuggets of wisdom, which is being a flame that moths are drawn towards.
Oh, that's really
which
good.
is amazing for podcasts, right? Because it's much more targeted. Where like I could reach out to you and say, hey, Brian, you want to be on my pod? And then now I'm delivering value to you because we're creating content. You can post some things on your social. I can post things on mine. And so because I remember thinking, dude, I'm looking for a needle in the haystack by running around trying to kiss 1,000 frogs, looking for the one like millionaire that can change my life, that I can build a relationship with. And also nobody wants to have their brain picked, right? Like nobody whose brain is worth picking wants to receive a message saying, hey, I'll pay for coffee. Can I pick your brain for an hour?
Yeah,
like what's the ROI for that person's time? That's trash, right? But if you say, hey, look, I have a podcast, I have a platform with attention that can deliver value to you. This is a flame. I'm going to draw moths towards it. Like the ROI on your time for those subtle changes has a massive impact. We're like, so yeah, submerging yourself in an environment with a high concentration of the people you want to surround yourself with is super critical. But also, how can you make yourself more valuable? And you talk a lot about this also. How can you make yourself more valuable to where you actually attract the types of people that you need to be around?
Dude, it is like the best clarifying question is, how could I do that? Like, what if this was easy? It's a great question. Like, I'm a collector of questions. Like, that is all I do in my life. So a great question that I collected is, what if this was easy? And what if this was fun? So I was just like, how do I become friends with multimillionaires? And I was like, how would this be easy and how would this be fun? I'm like, dude, if I started a freaking podcast. So people are like spending all of their time, energy, and effort trying to get invited to parties. But I'm here to tell you, the superpower belongs to the person that hosts the party. So if you're the host of the party and you're not getting the invites, so if you're not getting the invites to the parties, host the party and then invite the people to come. And what happens is, like, as soon as you have one person show up, more quality people show up. And it's just a huge thing. And that's why content matters so much, which me and you were talking about before this. Is just like anybody can start this from scratch. There's two different ways you can do content. You could be the enthusiastic beginner or you could be the grizzled veteran. I choose to take the frame of the enthusiastic beginner no matter where I am. Like right now we're doing millions of dollars a year, but I'm still the beginner because I put that in the context of 10 million a year or people that make 20 million a year. Whereas if I come on here and I make $1 million a year and I'm just like, oh yeah, I'm the expert, like let me tell you all this stuff, it doesn't translate as well. So where it comes from is like a place of curiosity. It's watch me build this thing. If you're flipping your first house, that's the content that builds the following. It's not your 1,000th house. It's your first house. It's your second. Here's where I messed up. Here's where I went wrong. Let me show you that I'm human and you have permission to be human too. That's what builds the following. So I tell people they don't care about what you've done. They care about what you're doing. So the most important thing that you just said is you just shared like a huge nugget for like, you know, be the moth that be the flame that the moth is attracted to. But also I tell people this is you have these people that are trying to get in contact with these millionaires and then they're like, what's the DM template? What's the email template? And I'm here to tell you, if you're not doing interesting things, they're not going to stay interested in you. So I've got this networking trick that I use, and I say, if you're going to a networking event, like be the most interested in the room, not the most interesting. And then that's how you're able to like meet people. And that's what I did in the beginning when I was doing nothing. I had nothing to offer. So instead I was just like, I'm making it a game to see how little can I talk about myself in any interaction that I'm in. And so I would just be so genuinely curious in everyone that they would be like, this guy freaking rocks. And that's the benefit of having a podcast. Yeah. Because all you're doing is asking questions. And people are like, God, maybe I say 10 words the entire podcast interview. And they're like, I like Brian. Brian rocks. But the part 2 to that, the level 2 to that is now that you have the initial relationship, how you maintain that initial relationship is validating that you do what you say, that the audio matches the video. It's super important. Everyone glosses over this part. Just like everyone says, I want to buy the multifamily, I want to buy the hotel, but nobody talks, how do you manage the asset for the next 3 to 5 years before you flip it, right? Nobody talks about that. Same thing here. How do you manage the relationship? You have a millionaire that comes to mentor you, now what? You have to have a high say-do ratio.
I love that.
It is the game changer for success. You have to have a high say-do ratio, which means somebody tells you to do something and they say, hey, check out this book, read this book. What you do is you stop what you're doing, you go on Amazon Prime, you order the book, you take a screenshot of chapter 4, paragraph 7, and say, hey, Gideon, like, I loved this part of the book. Thank you so much for recommending it to me. That small action reinforces that their time is not wasted on you. It is so massive. And so for 5.5 years, I've had the highest say-do ratio that you could have. And like the audio matches the video is what I talk about all the time. And because of that, people now know, like, and trust me, and they come to me, and whenever they tell me something or give me a piece of advice, they know that I'm immediately going to implement it, document it, and report it back to them. So that is the most important thing. Gladiators want to hang out with other gladiators. And if you're in the arena and the lights are turned off, they don't know that you're swinging the sword. Report it. Make sure that you're visible when you're swinging the sword, even if you're just practicing and learning how.
Yeah, and it's also valuing their time. They know that if they tell you to do something and you provide the feedback that you're doing it, they don't feel like their time is wasted.
That is the most important point. Is first, like when me and you walked in here, somebody was sending me a voice note. It's somebody that's just now starting business acquisition, and they didn't technically qualify for our group, but they're saying, hey, I already did this, and this. And like, what's next? I'm like, I can do something with you. Like, I will give you more attention. And so it's everything.
Yeah, I love that. All right, let's pull it back to your story. So continuing on, so you realized, okay, I'm in corporate America. I don't want to do this. I need a transition. What was that leap like? And we can keep this story or this portion more brief, because
sure.
I do want to show note to the other areas, because you probably told the story 1,000 times.
Yeah, no problem, because how I did it isn't how I would do it. And that's really important, because that's where, mentorship, coaching, community comes in, is you're buying other people's experience. So genius is learning from your own mistake. Well, it's like, it's good to learn from your own mistakes, but it's genius to learn from the mistakes of others.
Yep.
That is how you level jump in life, because then you can go to that person and say, well, how did you do it, and avoid 10 years of mistakes. So what I did originally was I made a bunch of money, I saved up a bunch of money, and I'd take that money that I saved and I'd buy a house. And then I'd live in one part of it, rent the other bedrooms out. Then I'd go save up my money, buy another house, live in one part, rent the other bedrooms out. House hacking, co-living strategy, 3 to 5% down. That's how I built my first $4,000 a month in passive income. From that point, I started up the podcast, and the podcast had no intention of being a business, no intention of anything, which is super, super important. Any content that you begin, do it with the intention of no revenue for 2 years at minimum. And this helps you build the frame of what content you actually enjoy making. So the longer that you can delay your ask, the bigger the ask can be. And so I did the podcast for an entire year before I actually launched a formal business around it. But what happened was I was talking organically, and I was just like, hey, check out, I was like, I'm doing this mastermind that I just paid for, and I was interviewing people from the mastermind that I was a member of. And I was like, I hired this mindset coach, and I brought him on the podcast. And I was like, this has really helped me. And then hey, you talk to the people, this is helping me a bunch. And I was documenting how it was helping me. And then people started signing up for the mastermind. People started signing up for the coaching. And I was just like, oh, that's cool. Good. And they were like, no, dude, let's pay you. It's like, why would you pay me? Because I'm doing it for free. And they were like, dude, well, I mean, this is a $10,000 thing. We'll give you 15%. I was like, dude, that's $1,500. I'm over here busting my tail to get $4,000 in passive cash flow. But I'm like, dude, this is pretty freaking passive. But what do I call this? This is different. I love doing this. I would already do it for free. I am doing it for free. And now all of a sudden that turns into a $12,000 to $15,000 a month revenue stream. What is this called? And so I came up with a term for it when my coach asked me the most important question that I've ever been asked in my life, which is, why does it need to be passive?
That's so good.
We're all so obsessed with passive income, but none of us want to live a passive life. Passive income is wonderful, but it's not the end destination. Passive income is the tool that we use to get to the end destination. So when he asked me that question, he said, Brian, you need to replace $20,000 a month. And I was going to do it over 5 years through investing in multifamily. And you know how much multifamily that would take. It'd probably take $20 to $50 million worth of multifamily for me to have $20,000 a month in passive income as the operator. And so he's like, let's do it at 6 months instead. And he goes, also, why does it need to be passive? I think that you're the type of dude that once you're out of your job, you're going to like work, because at the time I was 27. Like, it was my most energy rich and productive years of my life. And I was like, of course I'm going to work. He's like, on what? I was like, why have I never thought of that? Why has nobody that's listening to this ever thought of that? All we think about is, how do I hit financial freedom? But nobody thinks about what next. Because every single person that's listening to a podcast like yours or like mine, Action Academy, you're only 1 to 3 years away from complete financial freedom if you're starting from zero. 1 to 3 years, guaranteed, if you're asking the right questions to the right people and you're in the right communities with the right intention. After that 3 years is up, you have a lot of life to live afterwards. So my coach asked me that question, why does it need to be passive? I was just like, because that's what the podcasts say. That's what the books say. And that's why I wrote my book, From Passive to Passionate, because that's where I coined the new term for the income that I was talking about, that I had just created out of thin air. Passionate income. So how do you get paid to do what you would already happily do for free? And the book is called From Passive to Passionate, because how people view chasing their passions and building businesses around their passions is completely false and incorrect. For example, say I love mountain biking. And I'm like, dude, I eat, sleep, and breathe mountain biking. And I'm going to move to Denver, Colorado, where everyone mountain bikes. And I'm going to open up a mountain bike store. And you are mountain bike store number 547 in Denver, Colorado. There's one on every single block. And this is your life's passion, though. So you're going to take a bet, maybe you're going to quit your job and start this passion project. The fastest way to kill a passion is to lose money on it. So now you're not making any money from your passion project. Now all of a sudden you don't like mountain biking as much because now you can't feed your family. So the game is, how do we build enough passive income so that we can quit our jobs and focus on building passionate income? So the passive income is the tool that yields the passion. So like, no one's talking about this stuff. And that's why I was like, I need to write the book on it. So that's why the book is From Passive to Passionate, how to quit your job, grow your wealth, turn your passions into profit. So we talk about the entire process through it.
No, I love that. So my goal setting process very early on, when I started on this journey of like, how do I actually build passive income? The way that I set my goal, rather than a destination with a certain amount of money, etc., it was, what is the process in that period of life look like? And I broke it down as a ratio of things that I'm interested in doing versus things that I'm not interested in doing. So I said, okay, my goal for like freedom, not even necessarily financial freedom, but what I define as freedom, is to where 80 to 90% of my time is invested in things that I'm genuinely interested in. And then that 10 to 20% is invested into the struggle, because I'm a Christian like you, and I believe that struggle is integral to a healthy life. And so I always want to leave that 10 to 20% for struggle and adversity, whether it's like physical or mental, or just like challenges that we're overcoming in business, growing our business, whatever that is. And then letting that 80% be something that is like a creative process, like podcasting. I remember the first couple of podcasts that I recorded, sitting on and chatting with the other person, just thinking I could do this for the rest of my life. Like, I was trying not to get distracted from the conversation, just with this thought of, holy shit, this is so good. I can't believe I haven't started this early. Like, I could actually do this for the rest of my life, and breaking it down that way so that I can slowly work towards increasing that percentage of things that I'm investing time into that I genuinely love and that is fulfilling me. And I think oftentimes people conflate that with passive income, and so they end up killing themselves trying to get to that passive income, and they're totally miserable, just working themselves to the bone. And it's like, you could actually be enjoying this process. It should be a creative and fun process, because that's when you create the most magic.
Yeah, can I push back on that a little bit? Yeah. So it's not incorrect, but I want to like clarify a few things. So you said that you want like 80 to 90% fun and like 10 to 20% struggle. I would counter that with 50-50 is a little bit better. But it's just choosing what struggle and how to view struggle. Because, for instance, here's what people need to understand. I'm trying to think about how to phrase it. So, like, I've lived what everyone wants to do. And like when they dream at night, like, I lived in the Greek islands for a month with nothing to do, nowhere to be, no one to talk to that I had to, right? No meetings. And I was on the beach in Mykonos and Santorini and Crete, and I was drinking margaritas and mojitos every single day. And what I'm telling people is that after 3 weeks of that, you are only hungover and sunburnt. Like, because here's the thing, winners enjoy winning. And once you're able to retire economically, you are not able to retire mentally and emotionally. You have become a new person that has new character traits and new identities and new models that is you are unable to just do nothing now. And so when you retire, everybody thinks you're just going to go lay on the beach and do nothing, right? So what I did was, during that period, I was just like, I'm no longer winning. Therefore, I am no longer a winner. So all of life is literally, struggle is a necessity for life. And so I was just like, how do I introduce struggle into my life, like proactively instead of reactively? That's the big thing. Because even when I was just doing 20% struggle, the goal wasn't hard enough. So for me, like when I set goals, I try to set these impossible goals where I have to become a new version of myself in order to hit them. And like, that's where the growth happens. So I would invite you to like change kind of how you're viewing the work. So I call it like light work versus heavy work. So I think that's more so what you're talking about, where it's like light work is, what do I spring out of bed to do? Where I'm just like, I know exactly what I need to do and I can't wait to do it. For me, that's podcasting. For me, that's sales. That's marketing. I love that stuff. Operations, not so much. So that's heavy work, which is not necessarily harder, but you're just dragging your feet to do it. And so what I try to do is, how much light work can I involve? So I'm not eliminating the struggle, but I'm focusing on what I do. So there's this quote that says, delegate everything besides genius. And so it's just like, as the CEO, as the owner, like what is your 1 to 3 things that you just absolutely thrive at? And then what we do is we categorize our week in this system called red, yellow, green. And so red, yellow, green is, red work is classified as work that does not make you any money. Yellow work is work that leads to making money in the future. And green work is, this work directly makes me money. And so what we do is, at the end of the week, we go back in the calendar and we're looking at all the different projects and all the different calendar invites that are on there. And I'm like, is this red, yellow, or green? And so like you said, the 80% is like things that you enjoy. I'm like, well, for me, like I enjoy things much more when I'm making some money. And so my intention and my proactive approach is like, how do I make 80% of my calendar green time? And so like when it comes to my executive assistant, when it comes to anybody, I'm like, okay, did these calendar invites, did these meetings move us towards the direction of making more money? And then what most people do is they'll go and like they look at their calendar and it's 90% red. None of it led to making money. And so like that's a time management tool that I use that's like changed everything for us.
Yeah, I love that. And I appreciate you teasing that out and articulating it, because there's definitely areas of clarity for that. I think for me, it's that 80% is more like, what am I interested in pursuing? Like,
and having fun with.
Yeah, and having fun with. But even like, I'm so glad you brought this up, because this is something that you're bringing up a new perspective that's causing me to reflect and articulate in a new way. In terms of like the unproductive fun, so I'm still on a journey of self-discovery and figuring out myself and what I'm interested in. And that fun portion of it, I realized, because I'm a big fan of Tim Ferriss's take many retirements throughout your life rather than bundling it at the end. And so my wife and I, like we spent a month in Italy last year as just like our decompress time. And I discovered my tolerance for just total vacation mode is about 2 weeks. Like after 2 weeks, I like that lack of productive, like interested struggle, I just like fall apart. Like I need that type of like grit and struggle and like something to push through. Like the man in the arena like needs something to swing, right? Like the man in the arena is not going to sit in a cabana and drinking a pina colada, you know, because then he's not in the arena. And so for me, it's a lot of like, what types of things am I creatively pursuing, like the podcast or content, or even just like collaborating with people on businesses? Like this call, something I want to chat with you about is, I've somewhat like formed a community, but it was organic. I wasn't even trying to. It was literally just people reaching out to me saying like, hey, I'd love your thoughts on some stuff. And to be efficient with time, I said, hey, why don't we just get everybody on a call? So I don't even advertise it or anything like that. Yeah. And like that type of thing of pouring into people is the thing that it's like, I'm interested in this type of work. and that's how I want to be spending my time. But I love the perspective that you bring in terms of like the green, yellow, and red, because that's like a different angle that I haven't looked through. And so I'm really looking forward to spending more time reflecting on that lens to like shape how I actually think about this.
Yeah, and the context within which I say that is because right now, like, you are in like the self-fulfillment part of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And once you fulfill like your own thing and you are good, like me is good, you have to go to we.
Yeah.
So right now, like, you're finishing up that top of the pyramid where it's me and you're enjoying everything, but then eventually that's not going to be enough anymore. And even that 2 weeks won't be enough. And now it's going to be impact at scale, which is how do I impact other people and get others involved, right? That's where I'm at today. So like, I was on the beach in Brazil, and that's where my entire business started. Was after I was traveling. I went for like 6 or 7 months and just kind of aimless, like trying to figure out, I went through a breakup. I was trying to figure out all this different things, like, who am I? Like, I was losing friends. What am I here to do on earth? What am I here to accomplish? And that's super important because there's multiple levels of freedom. Financial is only the first. So financial freedom is, how do I get my like life back? And then time freedom is the second, which is, how do I get my time back? Because there's a lot of people that make $10,000 to $50,000 to $100,000 a month, but they can't just disappear on a Tuesday, right? So time freedom is now control of schedule. And the last one is mental and emotional freedom, which is the freedom to just walk on a beach and ask questions like, what am I here to do in life? Like, how do I impact others? How do I leave the world a better place than when I found it? How can I be the best husband, the best wife, the best spouse, the best friend, the best human? And so for me, I'm walking on the beach in Brazil, and I'm just feeling like completely lost. I'm out of purpose. I'm out of alignment. I'm no longer winning, like we talked about. And when a winner no longer wins, they're no longer a winner. And so now I'm like, who is Brian Luebben? And so the idea just popped into my head. I call it like a download. And that's how inspiration works. It's not like the lightning bolt. It's like a seed that's dropped into the soil. So you have to make sure the soil is fertilized enough for it to sprout. And so I was in an environment where I was just like finally taking time to just be like, I don't know what's going on, and that's okay. Whatever comes, comes. I wasn't trying to force it. So this idea comes, and it goes, go from me to we. And I had this guy named Ben Kinney tell me advice that shattered my entire life and is now everything that I base my business around off of. So his advice was, he like put a framework to it to make it a game, because life is all about games. And like, what games you play is like directly indicating of how successful and happy of a life that you lived. And most of the games worth playing are completely unwinnable. So like, marriage is a game you could play that is unwinnable. You can't win the game of marriage. Like, health is a game that's unwinnable. You can't win the game of health. You can only become more healthy. Like, business, you can't win the game of business. You can only become more profitable. Like, there is no end destination. So the game that he plays is, it's how do I make $1 million in a year? All right, first step. Second step, second level of the game. How do I net $1 million a year? All right, cool. Third level of the game. How do I pay my top 5 people $1 million a year? Okay, fourth level of the game. How do I personally give away $1 million a year? And that is how he was been able to frame business to where he's already been financially free for decades. But now he keeps going because he's like, how do I get them financially free? Now, how do I help all these other people and like build soup kitchens and like from scratch with millions of dollars? And like, so that's how I think about business now. And that's what keeps me going, to have this like massive meteoric ripple effect on the world. I don't want to just be like a pebble. I want to be like a meteor in the water. I see what Tony Robbins does, and I'm like, if I speak to 100 people, like, I can't wait to speak to 10,000 to 1 million. And that's where platform comes in. So that is what I think of when it comes to like business building and everything, is going from me to we. And also Zig Ziglar talks about this wonderful quote, which is, the best way to get anything you want out of life is to help enough other people get what they want at scale. And so that's what I think about. It's not about how much your time is worth. It's about how much value you provide at scale.
I love that. So tying back into your story, you end up turning your podcast profitable, and then you end up developing a community. What was the process and some of the lessons that you learned when you started shaping that community?
Yeah, so that ties in perfectly. So that's the process of me going from me to we. So what I did originally, instead of going and disappearing, now, which is what most people do when they want to start a business or do anything. They disappear, pop up 6 months later or a year later, and they're like, I did it. I built this course. I'm going to change the world. I built this business. I'm going to change the world. And then they launch it, and it's crickets. Nobody wants it because they weren't solving the proper problem. So when you're starting a business, you have to start with the problem first, then build the solution. Don't start with the solution and go find the problem. The problem is everything. So what I did was I wanted to validate the problem. So by this point, I've been posting some content. I had like 4,000 followers on Instagram. So nobody can use this excuse of Instagram following when I built my business. I was getting like 4,000 downloads a month for the podcast too. It wasn't crazy. Anyone can do this. So what I did was I was posting content about traveling, and I was like, hey, like I did this thing, like just documenting what I actually did, right? And people started organically DMing me and messaging me from like the podcast and stuff saying, hey, like I'm working this 6-figure job. Like, how'd you do this? Like, because I want to do this too. And I now realize that I can't just buy a single family house a year to pull this off. It's going to take me 20 years. I need to do something bigger. Like, how'd you do this in 2 years? I'm like, oh, okay. Well, now like 10 people, 20 people a week are asking me, why don't I just like release a free offer? And so what I did was I was like, I'm going to do 100 freedom calls. I'm going to do 15-minute calls where I'm just going to coach you for free. I have nothing to offer you. I'm just going to just book a call and I'll talk to you for 15 minutes. Because all I had was time. This was the seat to serve. Because, dude, I was just walking around the beach. I was like craving something to work on. And so what I did was I did 100 of those calls. It took me a month and a half. And every single call I asked the same question. I said, where are you at today? Where are you trying to get to? What are the roadblocks in between? Every single person, I would take notes. And over again, no matter what career they were working in, no matter what investment portfolio they had, same thing over and over again. Why aren't you doing the big deals? Why aren't you doing the big multifamily, self-storage, mobile home park, small business acquisition? Why aren't you doing these deals? Everyone said the same thing. I have a lack of clarity. I don't know where I'm going or what I'm doing. Got it. I have a lack of confidence. I've never done this before, therefore I cannot do it, right? I have a lack of community. I don't have people around me that are doing this, therefore I cannot do it. And lastly, a lack of capital. They're like, I don't have the money to do this, let alone have access to people with the money. So it all coincides and intertwines. And so I was just like, all right, these 4 C's, like alliteration again, like I love it. And so I was just like, okay, cool. Like this is where we're starting from. Now that I've done this, I know my customer, and you start with your customer and you start with the problem. So I know my customer. Now, what problem are we trying to solve? The problem that we're trying to solve is an expensive one, which if you're going to take time to build a business, solve a fucking expensive problem. Everyone's spending like years trying to solve a problem that is inexpensive with a customer that doesn't have money to pay for it. Don't do that. Take the same amount of time and instead invest in an expensive opportunity with an expensive customer. So I solve expensive problems for expensive people. And they love it when I tell them that. So the problem that we solve is how do I replace $10,000 to $30,000 a month in passive income over the next 2 years? That is the problem that we solve. And that is like a juicy problem, right? And it's a multi-million-dollar problem. And so what I did after that was I said, okay, I'm going to take all the things that you guys told me, and I'm going to go build a course. Would I recommend building a course to anybody? No. I think courses are terrible, actually, and I'll tell you why in a second. I built the course, it took me a month. And as I was building it, halfway through, it wasn't even finished, I email all the people that I had, coached for free. I said, hey, I'm doing this thing. It's going to answer all of your questions and help you with multifamily and everything and blah, blah, blah. $1,500? Question mark? And I put my Cash App and my Venmo tag in the email. And I made $100,000 in like that weekend. And I didn't have a landing page, I didn't have a website, I didn't have an EIN, I didn't have a business, I didn't have a marketing funnel, I didn't have email automations. One email, and it was like a paragraph. And that's what I sent because I led with value, right? So then this is called product market fit. And then what I was leading into now is called MVP, your minimum viable product. And this applies to any business that you're starting. So now the MVP, I was like straight up how I positioned it and how most people should position it is instead of acting like it's like this perfect thing, just straight up be real with the customer and be like, yo, this may suck. I don't know. This is going to be wonderful later and it's going to be way more expensive, but I'm giving you a massive discount. My ask is that you just give me feedback and tell me how to fix it. Ready, willing, and often. All right. And so what this does is it accomplishes two things for the customer. Number one is they're pumped that somebody, a customer, like a business, is actually wanting their feedback and using it. So they feel like they're building the business with you. Number two, everyone loves a discount. So I would position it as like, this is going to be a $5,000 thing. Like, I'm giving it to you for $1,500 lifetime access. And it was like the deal of the century from what happened next. So now I released the course, everything is going decent, like blah, blah, blah. Then I realized, holy shit, this isn't the answer. Because I was asking them, what's your favorite part? And they go, we like the course, but we love the Facebook group that you threw us in for free, where we met each other and now we're partnering on deals, and you know, the people that are here are sick. I was just like, okay, cool, wrong business. So I pivoted from a paid course with a free community to a paid community with a free course.
I love that.
The course became the 30-day onboard. The $1,500 course, the month-long course, became the 30-day onboarding process. Then we formally launched Action Academy Community January 2023, and now we do $1.4 million a year in top-line revenue with 300 almost active members. And it's a freaking blast, and it's changing people's lives. And so to land the plane here, what I don't like about online courses is we don't need more information. You don't need more modules. You need more mentors. Because if I tell you step by step how to buy a hotel, you just went through this process. If you watch an online course for 100 hours talking how to talk to brokers, how to negotiate, how to do due diligence, how to, creative finance, all this different stuff. It could have the best information in the world, but you're not going to have the attention span to digest it. And also, you're not going to have the confidence within which to implement it. So at the end of the day, like, I've spent over $100,000 on online courses myself. I've never finished one.
Same.
So it comes to the people. So acquisition is just a volume and a numbers game. Maybe you can online course your way through that. But when it comes to diligence and all of a sudden you have a $5 million LOI that's accepted, holy shit, what now? Biggest deal you've ever done in your life. I need to talk to people. So that's where community comes in. Like, cash flow gets you out of your job, but community keeps you out. So like for us, we're just like, you need people that are like holding your hand through this process. We call it the best communal combination of ass kicking and hand holding that exists, because we'll also kick their ass. We'll say, hey, did you call your brokers? Did you underwrite your deals? Did you submit your offers? But on the flip side, it's like when they're asking for help, we have people that have done it and that are doing it to come and help them and say, hey, this is not the offer that I would submit. Here's how you change it. And so that is step by step how we went from like no idea, nothing, $0 to now I can run this business anywhere. And I'm about to go travel to Europe here in the next month, June 23rd. Going to be in Europe for a month and a half running this business. I can do it anywhere in the world.
Oh, nice. Where are you going?
Dude, everywhere.
Nice.
So I'm doing Madeira first. I went to Madeira before to hike this like mountain range. It was like a sunrise hike. It's world famous. And when I went, it was a giant rain cloud. So all I saw was gray all around me. And so I'm going back with one of my buddies, and we're going to re-hike it. I'm going to redo it. So I'm doing that for 3 days, then Barcelona for a week, then going to run with the Bulls in Pamplona. Then from there, I'm going to the south of France. I'm renting a car. I'm going to go James Bond it up in Monte Carlo at the casino. I'm staying in Nice, France, one of the nicest 5-star hotels. I'm going to drive my convertible up and down the French coast, south of France, the French Riviera. Then from there, I'm going to Italy for a little bit, then down to Greece, Athens, and then Mykonos to celebrate for a little bit, because that's when my podcast will hit 1 million downloads finally. And then from there, going to Egypt. I've got an Airbnb that has like a view of the pyramids. And then from that, I'm going to Dubai, and I'm going to go skydive Dubai and then come home.
Dude, I love that. You're going to have to give me a call when you're over there, because Jackie and I are heading back over to Europe around July, actually. So there may be some overlap over there.
Dude, yeah, America's the best place to make money. Europe's the best place to spend it.
100%. And Asia and Southeast Asia. Yeah. If you've been, dude, that Thailand is like one of the greatest places on earth, in my opinion. But yeah, we're going to be heading over there for 1 or 2 months. I don't know. We got a... Last year when we went over there, we bought a one-way flight, and when we were looking for return flights, the round trips were cheaper than the one-way. So we went ahead and bought a round trip flight, and maybe that'll be our tradition each year. Dude, just buy a round trip from over there.
It's a blast. I call it earning your summer. So what I do is I front load the celebration. So what I used to do is I used to do really hard things and then plan the celebration. So what most people do is they set like this crazy thing that they're about to accomplish, but then it comes to the celebration time and they're like, I guess we'll go to dinner. Bullshit. That is not how life works. You know where happiness comes from? Happiness comes from the continuous pursuit and accomplishment of milestones towards set and projected goals in everything. So in your business, in your health, in your relationships, it's doing hard things because, and I can prove this, if you are just handed a mansion in Malibu and you wake up one day and you're just in a mansion in Malibu, you become hedonically adapted to that within like a week, you know, and then you're just like, oh, okay, well, I didn't do anything to deserve this, therefore, whatever. But if you worked your ass off and you were able to purchase that mansion in Malibu, it has meaning now because there's effort put into it. That's
Right.
why you have these Nepo babies. They're all depressed and on drugs because they just were handed everything. So happiness comes from the pursuit of goals. And I'm intentional with my wording here, my phrasing, because the accomplishment of the goal normally leads to depression. And I don't know if you've accomplished any like massive goals in your life, but like every single massive goal that I've accomplished, the mountaintop isn't as rewarding as you feel that it will be. When you become a millionaire, there's no mariachi band that pops up out of nowhere.
Right.
When you quit your job, there's no like celebration, like it just is. And then you'll get $10,000 a month, and then you'll get 20, then 50, then $100,000 a month, then $1 million a month. Like whatever you do, it's just more and more and more and more. So it all comes back to the beauty is found in the journey. It's found in the climb up the mountain, because once you get to the mountain peak, the mountaintop, you realize that you're the smallest mountain on the range and that it never ends. The mountain range is infinite. When you become a millionaire, you see the guy worth 10 million. When you see 10, you see the guy worth 100. 100 sees the billionaire. Billionaires see athletes. So it never ends, dude. It never ends, seriously.
Yeah.
And so at the end of the day, to land this plane, it comes back to proactively planning your celebrations. So I was a terrible job of celebrating and actually enjoying my view at the peaks of each peak. And so now what I do is I do what's called Earn Your Summer. So I'll set like a massive bucket list trip during the summer. And then now it's like my prerequisite is I have to do something very hard to earn it. So now it's like our hard thing that we're doing this year. Last year was writing the book. From morning to night, every single day, I spent 1,137 hours writing that book. And I finished editing it while I was overlooking the Swiss Alps in Switzerland. It was really cool.
That's amazing.
This year, we're completely redoing our onboarding systems. Like, we're completely revamping our program. We're doing like Action Academy 2.0. I'm doing that. I'm hiring a team. I'm getting the team delegated and everything set up right now. And I'm trying to do that while learning Spanish and trying to get my six-pack back. And so it's just like all these different things, hard things that yield the ability to enjoy the summer. So,
dude, I love that.
It's a blast.
I love that. That's so good. To circle back around to something that you said previously around how we don't need any more courses because we don't need any more information. I totally agree. There's a stark difference between intellectual knowledge and experiential knowledge.
Yeah, trench level.
Hell yeah. That's why I'm such a firm believer of ready, fire, aim.
Yeah.
Like, just go for the thing and figure it out as you're going. Like, jump out of the plane and assemble the next one on the way down. Like, you don't have to have everything figured out. You don't need to wait for all the lights to turn green before you leave to go to the grocery store, right? So, like, start taking action and moving, because you can read all the books in the world about riding a bicycle, but until you actually get on the damn thing, you're never going to really learn how to. So, tying that into... So you built the course, and then you built up the community. Now the course is a funnel into that community. How do you plan to scale that community while maintaining that quality of like the smaller, more intimate engagement?
That's a $1 billion question. Nobody's figured that out. So that is a question that I ask myself every single day. How we do it right now is, and like I could tell you how people have done it, because everything comes down to models. So you just said like jumping out of the airplane and building a parachute on the way down. It's like what I do is I have this acronym WHAM, like where are my models? So I'm also single, so it applies in both ways. So it's just like the acronym is like, I'm like, who has done this before me? Like, people have skydived before me. So I will simply go and use their models and their safety practices to make sure I don't die while jumping out of the airplane. Same thing when it comes to doing all of this. So the macro answer to that is to divvy your community up over and over and over and over again into smaller regional sections with local sub-chapters and city chapters, and have that intimate connection. Like, that's the answer at the macro scale. At the micro scale, we limit membership to 30 new members per month. which caps my business. We'll hit our bottleneck at 3 million a year by capping it at 30 new members a month. But like, and that's going to be another thing to go from 3 to 10 million. We're going to have a different offer that's adjacent, that's elevated, or we're going to have like a lower ticket thing that's like mass at scale, that's adjacent to the community. But right now we've just noticed that 30 new members a month, we can absorb really well. People are like very acclimated. It's a good, solid amount to have. But if we were to introduce like 100 members, like the system would break. So when it comes to business and scaling that conversation, there's only two different levers that you can pull. You can pull the lever of increasing the amount of customers that you get, or you can pull the lever of increasing the value of the customer. So it's called your sales velocity, or it's called your LTV, your lifetime value of the customer. So for us, right now, we're focusing more so on the LTV side, and we're capping the sales velocity side. So now it's just like, this is the one metric that we can focus on. And so that's what we're focusing on today. Is like, how do we increase, like maybe there's upsells, maybe there's up levels, maybe there's more like intimate level masterminds that are a higher ticket. We're trying to figure that out. But right now, like 0 to 1 million is product market fit, AKA, is this the right problem that we're solving for the right person and the right answer, the right solution? And then once that's validated, about $1 million a year, that's pretty validated because people are having success. Then from 1 to 3 is scaling more of what works. So now it's just building SOPs, operations, delegation, and elevation. From 3 million to 10 million is like, that's like the wild jump. That's where you're basically like a natural bodybuilder on stage to now you have to go compete with the pros. And so now you need to get somebody that's already won a Mr. Olympia, right? Somebody that's already scaled a company to $10 million a year. Somebody that's already built a sales team, a marketing team to 10 million plus a year. Like, so that's where I would go hire the person that's just like, yo, I've done Grant Cardone's videos for 5 years. Cool, come work on my team now and help us build. Because now you need a more expensive talent. Now it's a people problem. Because you need people that have been there before, and that's where you could start hiring out your blind spots because you have the money to. So that's what we're doing right now. So it's low and slow. Wealth's built in a crock pot, not a microwave. I don't want microwave money. I want like long-term, scalable, successful wealth. So that's what we're doing. Yeah, and I can walk through also like my businesses and stuff too if you want to do that.
Yeah, let's do that. Out. Yeah, pull that out.
Yeah.
Let's chat. I have one quick question before we dive into that, though.
Sure.
What metrics are you tracking as you actually scale that community? Like, what are the few like leading indicators that you're following?
In what context? In client success or in sales?
Just in like overall like health and scalability of that community.
Yeah, so when we look at engagement, we track engagement. So most communities just let anybody in with a credit card. For us, we have a full-time person that tracks every single person, always. So what we constitute as engagement is, are you showing up to your weekly pod, which they meet once a week? You have like a group of 5 that you meet with. Are you showing up to your pod? Are you showing up to Zoom calls that are offered? Are you on the Facebook page? Are you active? Are you viewing the posts? Are you engaging with the posts? Are you liking the post? Are you responding to connections that we make? So we have like a red, yellow, green scorecard for every single member. And so I could see if somebody's delinquent in 30 days of activity, and we get that report every Friday. And then if somebody's delinquent, then our team's reaching out with a phone call. We're asking like, what's going on? Are you okay? Like, what's happening? Because life happens, like right. Death, divorce, cancer, that stuff that it happens at scale. And so for us, like, we reach out human to human first. So engagement. And then after that, it's like, if they're still not doing anything and they're just ghosting us, then we kick them out of the community. So it's like, we do not, like, too many groups have 7 people out of 700 talking. For us, we're like, no, we refuse to do that. So engagement's the number one. And then we track, now we're building out an acquisitions program to where we can track each member's success on how many deals are they viewing, how many deals are they underwriting, how many offers are they sending. That's all we're going to track. And we're going to try our best to have a macro spreadsheet of everyone. So we can have like a master, that's my vision, is to have a master like trackable spreadsheet that shows across Action Academy, like, here's how many deals were analyzed across Action Academy. Like, here's how many deals were underwritten across Action Academy. Here's our assets, here's our offers sent, and here's our assets acquired. So it's just like, I want every single quarter to have like a quarterly report and send that. That's what the intention is. Right now, we're not quite there, but we're moving towards that and we're getting there close. That should be by the summer. That's our hard thing that we're working on right now.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's so good. All right, let's dive into this.
Yeah.
And I want to make sure, do we have a...
Yeah, we got the camera right here.
Let's see.
Yeah.
As long as we can. Here,
I'll show it right here.
This, yeah.
Yeah. So right here, you can kind of see it on there. Yeah. So this is literally my business flowchart of how we're going to make $50 million a year off of a podcast. So pretty sick, right? Yeah. So it starts with the podcast first. So this is like, and I got all of this from Walt Disney. So Walt Disney has this mind map where he has like the Mickey Mouse and all the creative content studio in the beginning. And then he has like Disneyland, TV, media, publications, newspapers all around. And that's how, like, the model within which I build my businesses, because you have to build your businesses one at a time, and they need to be complementary to each other, to where if you do one, it needs to feed the other, not be like completely separate. So it's all about vertical integration is what it's called. So for me, what I do is I start with the podcast that leads into the community. The community led to an international events and travel company. So let me see, I'll put it right there. Yeah, there we go. It led to an international events and a travel company to where now, like, that's almost $500,000 in revenue for us throwing events like in Tulum, Cabo, around like for the community only. So that's an additional revenue stream. That's almost a 7-figure business. Then that leads down into our hospitality, our boutique fund, which will come from, hey, we love these places that we're staying, these mega mansions and these hotels. Why don't we just buy them? So now it's just like owning the places that we're staying, right? So now that's a natural progression that feeds back into this, so we can throw our events at these houses, which ties back into the community, which ties back into our YouTube, which is going to be us growing like a whole channel around it, which ties into our business and real estate fund, and then which goes back into the properties. So all of these businesses, I have little 6, 7s, and 8s around them because I know how big they can get. And they all tie into each other. So what we're going to do is we're going to like keep scaling the community up, and that's our core like group of people and of operators and of revenue. Then we're going to be able to raise money and capital and talent from that community and use that to buy businesses and real estate. So I buy a new business, I put an Action Academy member to run it. They become free because I'm going to give them equity as well and profit share. So they become financially free. They're out of their corporate jobs. Now they're doing something that they own. And then same thing with the real estate. So when we raise the funds, like, they're going to be in with us.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And what does the top of the funnel for the podcast look like?
That's the hardest thing ever. Like, I don't even know. Like, the top of the funnel, like, growing a podcast is the hardest thing. So here's my advice for anybody that wants to start a podcast, talking to you people that are watching this. It is the most difficult medium to grow, and it is the most valuable. I made $1 million from my podcast before we hit 1 million downloads. That's super cool.
That's awesome.
Right? That's pretty sick. But there is no like virality when it comes to podcasting unless you have celebrity attached to it, which 99% of us that doesn't apply to. So it is the most difficult thing to grow. The best way to grow a podcast is having a unique story to tell, a unique journey to share, quality guests and quality content consistently, and then being on other podcasts. So like, you know, I do a lot of shorts that translate some to podcasting, but the biggest spikes I've got is when I go on a big podcast. Yeah, so I go on 3 podcasts a week as a guest.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, so that's like our big like KPI that we're tracked. That's like green time. For me, this is green time. Like, this is everything, because our customer journey is literally, I heard you on Gideon's podcast. I heard you on this podcast. Then I went and listened to 4 episodes of your podcast. And then from there, I realized I wanted to join the community. It's our number 1 referral source. So it's just like, it's everything. So podcast clips, just for the sake of posting podcast clips, don't hit. Like, I don't know about you, but I've never seen somebody's podcast clips that, unless they're in person, which is a whole other can of worms. Most of them are like Zoom or virtual. I've never seen one that went viral that wasn't in person, and most of the time wasn't with a celebrity. So unless you're doing an in-person podcast, maybe your clips can pop off a little bit more. But for the most part, most of us are doing virtual, like Riverside or Zoom. And those clips, like, it's almost no point posting them.
Right.
Yeah. So I don't even post them, to be honest with you. Unless it's in person. I'll try to do more in person now.
Yeah. No, I did notice that about your stuff. That's part of why I asked, because chatting with Rich, so his social...
He's only in person.
Yeah. He only does in person, and he leverages social a lot to funnel it in. But I like what you're saying, where it does make a lot of sense, because typically people either they're on social media or they're listening to podcasts, and that there is overlap between those two demographics, but studies show that like there is a clear distinction between people who listen to podcasts and people who just scroll on social media. Typically people who listen to podcasts, they're more likely to invest in themselves, they have a higher net worth, and these are just statistics.
It's
right?
intention based. So
Totally.
yeah, so like an Instagram person, like you're trying to get their attention like from cold, or they're just like scrolling and then they see your video. With a podcast, it's intention. Like they're like, I want to learn this, what this episode's talking about. And so you keep people for an hour. So it's like, that's how you build really deep relationships. It's like, for me, it's the people who listen to me every single day for hours, every day. I'm in their ear and they feel like they know me. And it's funny whenever I get on calls with people, they're like, dude, I feel like I know you. And it's super cool, but it is the hardest thing to scale. So what I do is I use my short form. I talk about like the topics that we talk about in the podcast. And at the end of the short form, I'll make a viral short form video just by myself organically outside of the podcast. And then at the end, I'll say, if you want to learn more about this, like we have like a 60-minute podcast episode on this, like comment podcast, and I'll DM it to you. That's the best way that we've grown.
That's solid. And how does an email newsletter fit into that?
I do an email newsletter. Email is the most important thing. Like social followers don't count. It's email that matters, because if the algorithm changes, like you still, your email is the only thing where it's like, if I post, I have like almost 300,000 followers on Instagram. And if I get 30,000 views on a video, that's good. So that's 10% of my audience. But if I send an email out, I've got like 12,000 on my list. If I send an email out, I know 60% of them are going to open it. So it's like, if you have a 300,000 person email list, you can build a huge, huge business off of it. So everything revolves around email list. I send a weekly newsletter. It just goes over like what I'm doing in my business, what I'm building, and then has like a small offer at the end. So, I mean, I think newsletters are cool, but you have to be careful to make them actually valuable.
Yeah.
Like every single week you need to bring the heat.
Yeah.
Otherwise people are just going to unsubscribe.
Totally. Yeah. And that direct to consumer engagement and interaction is so important, like you're mentioning. I think that's worth teasing out, because I mean, like there are a lot of businesses that are so heavily reliant on a relationship that's not direct to consumer that they end up just being, totally like under the will of whoever they're going through. Like fulfillment by Amazon, that was such a big fad for a while, of like, oh, I can get this product made in China for pennies on the dollar and push it through Amazon. And I'm like, but you're not actually engaging like or building relationships and being able to generate like recurring or cross-selling revenue with those customers. You have to go through Amazon, and so it ends up like just being a business that I think is trash.
I agree. Yeah, it's all about relationships. And like it goes back to the LTV conversation, which is like, now when it comes to your content, like me and you were talking about at the beginning of the show, what journey do you want people to go on with your content? So it's like, for me, if somebody follows me from scratch on Instagram, like 6 months later, if they're watching my reels every single day, what change should they experience in their life? Because otherwise it's just a waste of time.
Right.
And you're a waste of time.
Right.
Your podcast and your content's a waste of time. So same thing with my podcast. Like for me, I'm like, from somebody discovering my podcast to 6 months later, I want them to be under contract and close on an asset. Like that's what I want. Like I hope people replace corporate with cash flow. So like that is the purpose of the podcast, is for people that are 6-figure employees to become 7-figure entrepreneurs that can travel around the world. So like that is the transformation that I speak to, and everything on our podcast, if it doesn't speak to that, like I don't post it. So like I have interviews sometimes where I'm just like, well, that didn't move the ball down the field. Can't post it.
Right.
Yeah.
100%. All right. So to wrap up this amazing conversation, I want to ask a handful of questions. And the first one being, and you're going to love this because you're a collector of questions like myself, is what question do you feel most people fail to ask that if they asked, it would move the needle in the direction that they're trying to go with what you're doing, which is gaining that passive income and that financial freedom?
What do I want? Yeah. People think about clarity the wrong way. So they think about it in the context of how, then how fast, and then where/why/who, if they even get to that point. So what happens is people will do the thing, either A, they'll do the thing and they'll just keep doing the thing over and over and over again because they have no finish line. And then that's where burnout occurs. Or they'll get stuck at that how, option B, and they won't ever start because they're stuck at how, and that's analysis paralysis. So how clarity should work is like starting with the where, the what, and the why, and the who. Like, where do I want to go? Why? And what do I want? So like that's setting that 3-year vision first and then working backwards from there. So it starts with directional clarity, then sequential, then tactical. So directional is where, sequential is how fast, and then tactical is how. So it's flipping it on its head, essentially. So it's like, okay, what do I want? Where am I going? How fast do I want that? And now what are the assets and the strategies that will yield that? For instance, people come to me all the time and they listen to this show too. I want $10,000 a month in passive income so I can quit my job, travel around the world, build my own business. And how fast do you want to do it? Next 2 years. My brother in Christ, you are buying single family. It's not going to happen.
Right.
You know, like you have to change the strategy. So like for me, I was like, to do that in 6 months, like I wanted to, I started up the podcast business. The only reason that I recognized that as an opportunity was because I was focused on it. Because I was like, doing the multifamily thing isn't going to get me where I want to go. Same destination, different time frame, sequential clarity. So in 6 months. And then tactical was, okay, now what's left? Because strategy is a set of self-imposed constraints on decision making. So strategy is the power of saying no, not saying yes. So it's like every single yes needs to be justified by 100 no's. Yeah.
I love that. Yeah, every decision that you make kills 1,000 other decisions that you could have made.
Correct.
Dude, that's so good. All right, next, what was a moment where you felt like you were plateauing in your business and then you had a mind shift or a realization that enabled you to break through?
Every Monday. Yeah. Nonstop. It's always the same thing. That's business ownership. You know, if I could think of a specific situation, it would be, I hired a $50,000 business coach the first year that I started the business. And he introduced me to that question of like, what if it was fun? What if it was easy? And like, I was just like, this is a hard thing. It needs to be hard. We need to have a hard working solution. Right. And he's like, but what if it was fun? It's like, what if it doesn't have to be hard? What if you're self-imposing hard? Because you think that that's what's required and that you don't deserve it unless you do hard. And so my tendency naturally is I'll outwork my way out of problems. I will work my way out of problems. But you can't like hustle and grind your way past like $1 million a year. Once you're making $1 million a year, you can do that in some W-2s. But once you're doing $1 million a year, it's just like you have to learn how to leverage and delegate and elevate and work through others and scale. Like that is how the game works. Like show me somebody that makes millions of dollars and works 10 hours a week, and I'll show you somebody that's significantly more wealthy than somebody that's maybe worth 10 times what they are, and they work 100 hours a week. You know what I mean? So that's a big realization that I had was a lot of the time my answer is work more, work longer, work harder, but less is more in so many different ways.
I'm so glad that you said that. I read a book called Essentialism, and that book came at a pivotal moment in my life because I was hit with so many different waves at the same time. We don't have to get into it, but there was just so much going on in my life where I realized I need to drop some of these balls. I just can't drop the glass ones. And so I became highly selective with exclusively working on the items that were going to move the needle. And what started off as one of the most chaotic, overwhelming periods in my life ended up being one of the most productive and fruitful because I exercised the muscle of exclusively working on the items that are going to move the needle. And so that's something that I'm constantly trying to rewire my brain on is I'm so comfortable diving into the trenches and getting messy and dirty and just working and grinding through stuff that sometimes I realize I am grinding through the trenches when I don't even need to be. I can be smarter and step out and delegate and just be more thoughtful with who, not how. Like you talk a lot about pulling in the right people and letting it be a smooth process where all of the bullshit is cut out.
Yeah. I interviewed Dan Martell here, and he has this wonderful quote where it's just like, you can't out-earn problems. You can only, like, you actually are, let me think about how to phrase it. you can't out earn problems. Like, they're always going to be there. So it's like you actually having problems is a sign that you're growing in the right direction. So the more and more expensive problems that you have, like, that is what business is. Business is the process of solving expensive problems, increasingly more so. And then, so Dan said, he's like, problems aren't problems, they're puzzles waiting to be solved. And so shout out Dan Martell. And so once I learned that, I was like, oh my God, like, I'm trying to avoid problems. But the reality is that, like, I make money by solving problems. So they're never going to go away. Chaos is never going to go away. How you manage the chaos is what changes. Well, how you manage the problems is what changes.
I love that.
And that's what I'm working on right now. I'm not that wonderful at it yet. But ask me again in 10 years, and I'll be pretty stoic about it.
Yeah. We'll do this again in 10 years then.
Yeah. Sounds good.
Cool. From passive to passionate, Brian Luebben, solid book. I sped through this when I was doing research for this interview, and I'm excited to take more time and do a deeper dive on it. Where can people find you?
Yeah, you can search my name anywhere, and I'm there. It's like all my social media and everything. You can check out Action Academy podcast. Like, it's my baby. I've done over 500 episodes. We do a show a day, Monday through Friday. Done in over 37 countries, 7 time zones. I never stop. I do a podcast a day for like 3 years now. Check out the podcast. If you guys like this show, you'll like that show. We help you replace corporate with cash flow. And then if you want to join the community, I'm not even going to give them a resource for that. I say go listen to 2 episodes of the podcast. And if they vibe with what we talk about there and how we talk about it, they'll enjoy the community. So check out the podcast. Check out my social media. We'll see if we vibe.
Awesome. Sounds good. Thanks, Brian.
Thanks, bud.